Week 1 NFL injuries for bettors, brought to you by OffshoreInsiders.com. Free picks and the best premium picks from Joe Duffy's Picks, the Master Lock Line, Stevie Vincent, and the world-famous late info line at OffshoreInsiders.com. Welcome to your weekly must-view. We've got the NFL Injury and Player Personnel Report. This is for sports handicappers, sports bettors, and fantasy football players alike. And of course, I realize there are plenty of fantasy football players who also like to bet on the outcome of games. Let's get straight into week 1. Adrian Peterson is a guy who came off a phenomenal year last year, one of the great years in NFL history, almost broke the rushing record for total rushing yards in a season. But a very key suspension has happened with him. His fullback, Jerome Felton, is going to miss the first 3 games because of substance abuse. Now, when he was on the field last year, Adrian Peterson averaged 6.9 yards per rushing attempt. When Felton was off of the field, just 4.6 yards per rushing attempt. And as those of you who've been with me for quite a few years know, that I generally like to fade players who are off of career years, especially in the case of Peterson, who felt he had something to prove, and maybe taking the year off because of injury was somewhat of a blessing in disguise in that he didn't take quite a beating. But now he's going to be without his key fullback. Everyone's going to be focused on him. Quite frankly, Minnesota doesn't have a very good quarterback situation at all with Christian Ponder. Look for Adrian Peterson to have an off year, especially the first 3 weeks of the season. Now, we also have always liked to go against, and really even more so in recent years, quarterbacks who entering last season did not have much of a track record or any track record at all in the NFL and had fantastic years. Now, again, in the past 3, 4, 5, even 6 years going back to Matt Ryan, for example, usually applies to rookies or first-year quarterbacks. And the guys that we have in mind entering this season, of course, Robert Griffin III. Now, Griffin III, so many more things to consider. His injury situation, even his own dad had said that he wants to see Robert become more of a pocket passer. So there's a lot of other metrics to consider with Robert Griffin III. Russell Wilson, everything went fantastic for him last year. Andrew Luck. I know that Andrew Luck was that can't-miss quarterback, and he did everything right last year, but still, we're going to look to fade him. And Colin Kaepernick, remember this, Colin Kaepernick was not even the starting quarterback at the beginning of last season. He didn't take over until Alex Smith got hurt, and then, of course, Jim Harbaugh decided to stick with him. So they are quarterbacks we're looking to fade from a gambling standpoint, and those of you who play fantasy football, they're probably going to be overvalued this year. A big injury situation and for the Denver Broncos on defense, and a suspension. Von Miller, their top pass rusher, was suspended for the first 6 games. Denver's defense, when Miller was on the field, they allowed 4.5 yards per play with him on the field, 5.1 with him off of the field. But in addition to that, remember that bizarre faxgate where they had to release Elvis Dumervil because they didn't fax his contract in time to the league offices? Well, with both of those players on the field the last 2 years combined, they sacked the quarterback on 8% of the quarterback drop-offs. With both off of the field, 3.4. So Denver's defense is going to struggle mightily. There's no question they have the best regular season quarterback in the history of the NFL with Peyton Manning. So look for a lot of scoring when they're on offense. Look for a lot of scoring when they're on defense. The odds makers aren't oblivious to this by any stretch of the imagination, so they will have high totals. But will they be high enough? Probably not, especially the first 6 weeks of the year. But at least once they get Miller back, look for their defense to improve. For those of you who play fantasy football, if you're going against that Denver defense, that would be a good thing. The Pittsburgh Steelers, young offensive line, haven't been able to establish a running game as of yet. This is going to be a down year for the Steelers. Ben Roethlisberger showing signs of wear and tear. He doesn't have that escapability using his pure strength that he has in previous years. Remember, Mike Wallace is gone. The Pittsburgh Steelers are going to be a team we're probably going to look to fade. And again, Ben Roethlisberger, fantasy football players, this is not going to be one of his great years. The Baltimore Ravens. So much has been said about the fact they're going to be without Ray Lewis, their emotional leader and their leader as far as overall talent on defense. Remember, they also traded Anquan Bolden, who was a great possession receiver. Dennis Pitta is out for the season. Joe Flacco, kind of the opposite of a Peyton Manning. Flacco's one of these guys during the regular season's a so-so regular season quarterback. Like Eli Manning, he turns into Superman in the postseason. But the defending Super Bowl champion Baltimore Ravens going to be a team we're going to look to fade early. And I wouldn't be too eager to draft any one of those guys on the Baltimore Ravens offense. Tampa, questionable offense, but adding Darrelle Revis. Rookie Jonathan Banks is supposed to be a key player. He's going to sneak under the radar. Look for Tampa's defense to be quite good this year. My biggest worry is they might be on the field quite often. Well, we're going to be back with next week's injury and personnel, some things to look at, both from a gambling and better standpoint and a fantasy football standpoint.